the biggest lesson learned is to not compare yourself to the rest of the people out there, right? That's kind of what I love about ultra running and running in general is you're really just, it's against yourself, really. I mean, we're all out there competing, right? We all want to be the best, but you got to be the best you every day you kind of go out there. So are you better than you were yesterday? Are you better than you were the day before?
All right, we are back for week 2 with Steve Epifano of a 5-week series that we're looking to do as he gets ready for his first 100K, the Robin Ames Memorial 100K. Steve, we are super excited to have you back. If you guys haven't watched last week, go back and check it out. We really set the foundation for what this run's about, who Robin was, and really how we can all be a part of that story still and help turn a tragedy into something beautiful. Make sure while you're there, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the notification so you don't miss any of the episodes coming forward. Steve, thanks so much for being with us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for having me back. Yeah.
We are excited. So, man, we know we're just over 2 weeks out from the big run. You have been running your butt off. I keep up with your training, so I know you just finished up a 200-mile month in October. You're coming up on 2,000 miles for the year. So we are going to touch on training. We want to kind of dig deep a little bit. But I also know there's way more to your story. So before we do that, take us back to 2012, because as we corresponded, there was a day in 2012 where you had an encounter with a doctor that gave you some information that really changed your life around your heart, to include, hey, don't lift more than 10 pounds, forget ever running long distances, and oh, by the way, you're staring down the barrel of open heart surgery. So why don't you walk us through what that was like and how that changed your lifestyle going forward?
Yeah, sure. And thank you again, like I said. So yeah, in 2012, it was pre-diagnosed in like 2007, my condition. Kind of put it on the back burner, really didn't think about it, didn't follow up on it very much. So then after my son was born, stressed out, I was going for my master's degree at night and everything like that. And my wife said, you should probably really go take a look at whatever that heart issue was, because it might be serious, So I did that. I went and got it checked out. This time they did a little bit better diagnostic checks. And then the cardiologist said, you should probably follow up with a surgeon. And when I heard that, I was like, all right, this is probably pretty serious, So I was diagnosed in 2012 with, it's a congenital heart defect, and most people don't know it until it's too late. So I have a bicuspid aortic valve. Most people's aortas or valves have like 3 leaflets, and mine has 2. So it opens it's almost like a shape of a football. So sometimes you get some leakage and everything like that. But then along with that, I have an aortic aneurysm coming right out of the valve. So sometimes with the bicuspid valve, there's an aneurysm with the aorta. And like I said, for the most part, some people don't even know that they have it until it's too late, and then there's a dissection and stuff like that.
Oh.
So meeting with the surgeon was pretty rough. My wife was with me. He pretty much made it seem like I was going to be on the table the next day. From what I've learned, and I've worked in the hospital too, surgeons really don't have good bedside manner. They just kind of tell you matter-of-factly what's going to happen. So it wasn't a matter of when I was going to have, or if I was going to have the surgery, it's when I was going to have the surgery. Then after that kind of shock, he told me to follow up with a cardiologist to kind of figure out my treatment plan and everything. I was put on tests for every 3 to 6 months to make sure there's no increase in the size of the aneurysm. And then from there, they would just kind of watch it. But I was pretty close to being a candidate for open heart surgery. I think there may have been some diagnostic imaging, maybe some margin of error that what we kind of cleaned up later. But I think the time for surgery is at like 4.5. I think it's centimeters. I think, yeah. And then I was at like 4.4.
I think this sounds like a bad idea to run. And I'll be honest, I'm sure, I'm sure everybody watching is thinking you shouldn't run. How does a doctor tell you give it a shot to go run? I mean, did the doctor know you were going to try to run at that point? Like what happened that day? I mean, I'll back up, because obviously if he tells you that, you're going to have surgery and you think it's going to be the next day, how do you decide that you're going to go run?
Yeah, so it wasn't that day where I was like, hey, maybe I can fix this by running, but it was probably a good 2-3 weeks where I thought, oh man, what am I going to do? I just had a 2-year-old son, you know what I mean? Been married for 3 years. So immediately all those thoughts come into your head, don't have life insurance yet, any type of things like that. So it wasn't until I talked to my cardiologist, probably a couple weeks after that, and really put a plan together. Because I had always been active through high school. So I ran through high school, I played football, I did all that kind of stuff. Really, I sat the bench in football. I practiced a lot. I didn't play. So, but I lifted weights as it was required. I lifted weights all through college. I got crazy dumb trying to put up some pretty big weight. And then I found out that, you can't lift anything over 10 pounds with this condition. It's anywhere where you have to bear down and strain is really where a requirement is. You shouldn't do that. So, I mean, I do get out of like bringing groceries down and everything like that. So moving, I just point to different things and have people move it that way. So
is that still, and I was going to jump in later when we talk about training, but is that still a current restriction?
Yeah, I shouldn't, do any heavy lifting or anything like that. I really don't even do any body weight exercises. Like I won't do push-ups, sit-ups, or anything like that. So that kind of throws like cross training and strength training right out, which is why I just strictly am cardio the whole way. And talking to my cardiologist, anything that increases or decreases your blood pressure over time is good. So light cardio, anywhere where I'm keeping my heart rate below 180 beats per minute, like for sustained amount of time, and then below, like 170 or 160. So if I'm cruising at 140, between 130 and 150, I'm right in the range of where I should be. So anywhere where my aerobic threshold is increasing, that's fine, because over time that decreases your blood pressure. It's anywhere where there's a sudden increase in blood pressure where a dissection can occur.
Let me interrupt for a second, because I want to go back to a little bit about what you just said before, because we're going to talk about your heart rate training and stuff like that too in just a second. I want to go back. What did you tell yourself, like the day, to say, I'm going to start getting into running? You said you talked to your cardiologist, and how did you go to where you began to do something like to put a plan into action? Because some people, when they're faced with this kind of an obstacle, they're either going to fall into a series of depression and they're going to kind of just be, kind of give up on life to some degree, or others are going to respond and put together some sort of just overhaul of their entire life and try to just face it head on and do something different. So what actions did you put in place, or specifically, do you think that you told yourself at that moment that's just going to be different? You're not going to be defined by this.
Yeah, and I think it had a lot to do with my cardiologist too, because I'd asked her, so what can I do? I wanted to stay active, stay somewhat healthy. First she said, I was slightly overweight from college still. Didn't kick the freshman 30 that I put on. So she was like, just anything aerobic. And then I said, does running work? And she's like, yeah, just keep it light and everything like that. So I just went back to my cross country training that I did in high school. I kind of wish I knew now, or I knew then what I knew now about running, and I probably would have done a little bit better in cross country and track. But, I just put the first pair of shoes on that I found, and I just started running, you know what I mean? And it was like, this isn't going to define me, like you said, right? So, just looking at my wife and looking at my son, and I was like, I got to be here for them. So I got to get healthy and I got to get my stuff together.
And that's great. And I think that there's probably a lot of people that are watching that are either dealing with an injury or dealing with, some kind of medical issue to where the future is uncertain. So I think what you just said is super helpful. Obviously, it helped in this situation that running was one of the options on the table, but from the self-talk aspects, and this will not define me, you had a clear why, and then you just kind of, stayed positive. I appreciate you walking through that. I'd like to go now. So we kind of know where you came from, right? You've had a pretty crazy background. So let's fast forward back to here. You went from, hey, don't run, to now, like I say, you just closed out a 200-mile month. So as we're looking at the 100K, let's really talk about your training. What does a current training week look like for you right now? Because I know we've looked through it and you're pretty consistent. So what does that look like? And then how did you kind of come up with that?
Yeah, so it's a little bit of my own concoction based on my first 250Ks that I ran. I didn't want to be really regimented and when I look and see like a 20-week training plan out in front of me, I get really regimented and I get really OCD about, hey, I got to do 4 miles this day. I got to do 5 miles the next day. And if I don't, I'm really angry about it. And my wife wants to know what the heck is going on. So I try to be a little bit more flexible now, which is why I look at it kind of week to week. And I knew I wanted to hit, anywhere between 60 to 70 miles a week. And I try to max out at 10 miles a day, whether I'm doing a speed day, easy run day, 10 miles a day during the week, and then one long run on the weekend, either Saturday or Sunday. I like Saturday so I can have a couple beers on Saturday night and not have to worry about it Sunday morning. But then that allows me one rest day during the week. So Mondays are usually a pretty good clip if I have to, depending on what I've done on the previous Saturday. And then Tuesdays are generally my speed or hill days. And then Wednesday's the recovery low heart rate day after that, because I try to make my workouts pretty hard for myself anyway. And then Thursdays will be a rest. And then Fridays, depending on what my plan is on Saturday, will either be like just a nice cruise or will be like a fast Friday, which I try to run at like a threshold pace type stuff. Saturday's a long run, either 20 to 30 miles.
So you said about 20 things that I would love to talk about.
Yeah.
And I know Jeff has some specific questions, but I think there's a perfect opportunity because you talked about it. So we did have a couple of viewer questions and I wanted to make sure I cover them tonight. And so one of them from it's the Instagram @CBartETC. He's actually a great guy. He's been part of the ultra running community since the beginning, Chris Bartoli. His question was, how far is your longest training run in this training block as you prepare for the 100K? And you kind of referenced it, but what's been your longest run?
So my longest run during this training block has been another a 50K. I did, it was like 33 miles about. And that was like mid-September. I think I did that.
And was there an intentionality to that? Was that kind of a magic number for you, or was it you just knew you wanted to do something long and that felt right?
Yeah, I wanted to do something long to kind of make sure I'm fueling properly, make sure I'm up on my hydration, and kind of to map out the route a little bit. So I mapped out the first half of my route for this run too. So
yeah, a couple things that you said that got my attention. And one of them, I can't believe it got my attention because I don't personally train by heart rate, which is the funny thing I'm going to ask, like get into the topic, unlike him. But you do. And, but you said about the risk, to your heart that you can still only lift 10 pounds, right? There's certain, limitations you still have, and you've got to pay attention to your heart rate. But you also said in your current training, you do interval work and you do hill work and stuff. Like, what is your max heart rate that you're allowing yourself to get to at that level of intensity? I guess I'm trying to understand, how do you balance being able to do speed work and interval type work, which is, it's anaerobic type work.
Yeah.
And so how does that balance out with your heart condition?
I can't hit like 180 beats per minute for like a sustained amount of time. So I can't hit it for like 1 to 2 minutes or something like that. But during my intervals, I try to stay around the 170, 175 mark, just so I'm not putting any risk there at all either. And I try to keep my intervals between, 30 seconds to a minute, depending on what I run. And then if I do like half miles, I'll just make sure I ratchet it back and stuff like that too. But it's helped me because I've been able to really reduce my aerobic threshold, like lower my aerobic threshold a lot. And I'm be able to run faster at a lower beats per minute as I've been doing my heart rate training and everything like that.
He knows I'm going to jump in.
Lord.
So in fact, I'd asked you some questions today on a post, kind of what are your zones and different things for heart rate. I'm a huge fan, or it has helped me out, heart rate training, mainly in the aerobic building kind of block.
Mm-hmm.
What have you noticed is the biggest benefit? And you just mentioned kind of the threshold stuff, but how has it played a part in building aerobic base? I know you do some really low heart rate training for recovery. How does it play into recovery, endurance, and that kind of thing? What's been your experience?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of like active recovery. Even after like a marathon, a pretty hard marathon or something like that, I try not to take too many days off. Like I'll probably like if I do a marathon on a Saturday, I'll try to hop back out on a Monday or Tuesday and do a really low heart rate just to get the legs moving again. And I mean, anytime I don't run for a day, I feel crazy anyway.
And I'm going to just say thank you for saying what you said, because my coach is probably going to listen to this also, and he gets frustrated with me because like after my 50K, I want to run the next day.
Yeah.
And he's like, you need to take a couple rest days. So I'm a fan of what you said. I appreciate that. The other thing though, I'm OCD about plans too. Like I've done Excel spreadsheets forever. And one of the things you did send us was your first 50K training plan, which I really do appreciate you sending. It got my attention in a way because I saw some things in there that I've kind of evolved to with having a coach, which has been really cool, to be honest. And so, when I did a lot of my early running and training for my first, 50Ks and stuff like that, I did everything by distance and set number of miles each run, that kind of thing. But what you have in your plan is that you did that for the first half. Then after you got to a like week, 15 or something in that plan, like a little past your midway point, you actually shifted your long runs to be based off of time. I know your current running doesn't actually do that based on how you described it, but there was a point in time that you ran distance, like set miles, and then also a set duration, length of time, and you had like 4-hour runs on a Saturday or a 5-hour run. What do you see as the positives and negatives for either approach?
So I think as you're running these longer and longer distances, it's all about being on your, learning how to be on your feet for greater periods of time. I find that when I'm running for distance, I'll run faster. But if you're running for time, you're just going out there and you're kind of enjoying it. You're going to clock in at 2 hours. So what does it matter how fast you run it, right? It's just you want to be on your feet for 2 hours at a time. You want to be on your feet for 5 hours at a time at a pretty good clip. But then when I'm running for distance, it makes it really hard to kind of slow down. Like, the hardest thing I do is probably a 20 to 22 mile low heart rate run because I just want to fly. You know what I mean? I just want to get out there and run. But I'm just plodding along. And that's probably the biggest thing for me is trying to dial it back on those days where you have to dial it back, that kind of thing. But I like both. And frankly, I probably should have put a little bit more just running in for time during this training block. But I kind of came up with this idea kind of like in the middle of the summer. I was like, oh, I'm going to do it. So just kind of winging it.
Yeah, it's cool. I'll be honest, for me, the running by time is one of those things that when I first started being assigned or added that to my running calendar and stuff, it made me insane because, I would have to know I'm going to be running for 3 hours today, and it doesn't matter how fast you go. But I have found that mentally, it's probably the best thing for training for ultras, that it forces me to understand there's a time element regardless, and that you're going to be out there, and it doesn't matter how fast or slow you're going, you're going to be there for that long. And so, I think it's been one of those things that's been really, really cool for myself. And so I just saw it in your plan and I thought, this is neat. I want to talk about it. The other thing that I had, just some of the things I was thinking about, that when I looked at your Strava account and everything, you've run over 2,000 miles this year. That's a lot of miles in a given year. It's something that a lot of us kind of, when we get into the ultra running, we end up realizing we're doing 200-mile months pretty often, and the miles just continue to ratchet up. But that comes at a cost. It comes at a cost of time and with your family and with your job and everything else. So how have you learned to balance everything and also put in the number of miles that you've done?
Well, I mean, a big thing is, the support of my family is one. So I wouldn't be able to do like the Saturday long runs if my wife wasn't okay with it, that kind of thing. But I'm out there. I wake up as early as I can. I'm usually up at 4. I know it's going to take me anywhere between, an hour 20, an hour 45 to do my 10 miles, my max. So I know I got to get up and do it. And there's been days where I've had to do a 20-mile run on a Friday, and I'll get up at 3:00 and do it that way. That kind of thing, when somebody says they don't have time to do something, I find that as a weak excuse, because if it meant something to you, you would find the time to do it.
I think that's how he and I both look at it when it comes to our families as well. It's very important that we look at it that if you're going to sacrifice something, you don't sacrifice your family, you don't sacrifice your job, you sacrifice your sleep, and you just kind of suck it up. It's makes about putting yourself in a position to be there for everybody, because they are giving up time with you, but you can kind of sacrifice yourself a little bit more in that. So I appreciate you sharing that, because that is a challenge a lot of ultra runners have, and a lot of runners do, that when they start putting this mileage in, finding the time, it's there, but it typically comes at the expense of somebody, and so sometimes you have to make it at the expense of you.
Yeah, I agree. I've learned to run on about 6 hours of sleep is generally what I'm doing well. Anything less than that, then I go crazy, but I can function on 6 hours.
I love it. All right. So for the people that are watching at home, you're getting close to the end of your training block. What has been your biggest lesson learned that you can share so far for somebody who's thinking about doing what you're doing?
I mean, for me, right, it's the biggest lesson learned is to not compare yourself to the rest of the people out there, right? That's kind of what I love about ultra running and running in general, is you're really it's against yourself, really. I mean, we're all out there competing, right? We all want to be the best, but you got to be the best you every day you kind of go out there. So are you better than you were yesterday? Are you better than you were the day before? It took me a little bit of time to realize that. Like, I'm looking at guys, I'm like, man, they're running 6:30 for a marathon. How am I ever going to get there? And then sometimes you're like, you know what? I may not get there, and I'm okay with that, but I'm improving every day I go out there. I'm running more miles every day I go out there. And I'm running my own race. And that's kind of really been my biggest kind of eye-opening throughout my whole ultra running career since the beginning of this year, really. So that's kind of been my biggest takeaway.
Dude, I couldn't have put it any better. We have really enjoyed talking to you tonight. And for everybody watching, make sure you check in next week, because we're going to be getting into the nuts and bolts of what is the race strategy. What does that look like? We're talking nutrition, hydration, what's the course? And so make sure you're there for that. Again, subscribe, turn on the notifications. Steve, we really, really enjoyed your time tonight, man. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me again.
All right. See you next week.
See you.
And cut.
And cut. You look huge.
You're huge.
Your head. Hey everyone, this is Jeff, and well, I'm gonna start all over because I was going to just mumble something else about you, but I'm not gonna do that. Hey everyone, this is Jeff and Jeremy of the Ultra Running Guys.
Yeah.
That was fascinating to me, and I hate heart rate training.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of it either,
I almost stopped recording, and I'm glad that I didn't, because that's so going in there. That's fascinating, and I hate heart rate training.
It's true though, I really do hate it. But I'm slow compared to you people. So when I'm out there,
Steve's fast.
Boy, all y'all are fast. I'm slow. No idea where where's the marker at?
Let's take the lid off. There you go.
Sorry. I'm gonna do my best, and I'm probably gonna get it all cut out, but that's okay, because that's what we do. Anyway, ready?